Hey friends, Matt here, and in this video I want to show you a cool and simple trick that you can use to create more aggressive and cool lead sounds for your tracks. Let's dive in. Okay, so here's an example of the type of sound that we're going to create in this video using a track of mine that I did recently for the Weekly Beats Challenge, and it sounds like this. Okay, so I've gone ahead and grabbed the MIDI from the original melody track and pulled it onto a new MIDI track, and let's go ahead and create this sound from scratch. So for this, you could use pretty much any synthesizer. All you need is for that synthesizer to have FM capabilities in some way, shape, or form. So for the original lead sound of the track, I actually used Wavetable in Ableton Live. So let's go ahead and use Wavetable for this as well. So let's just add a Wavetable to the track, and by default, our Wavetable sounds like this. Now the first thing we're gonna do, because this is a lead sound, I'm gonna go ahead and switch Wavetable to mono so that we're only ever playing a single note at once. Now for this trick, you can use either a sawtooth wave or a square wave. Let's go ahead though and switch this to a square wave on the basic shapes. And now for the simple trick. In order to get that really aggressive sound that we heard in the original lead, all we need is effectively another oscillator playing 2 octaves below the original oscillator and then modulating the frequency of the original oscillator just a tiny little bit. In order to achieve this in Wavetable, I'm going to go ahead and go to the effect mode of the oscillator and select FM, tune the FM 100% all the way down, and then just take a listen to what happens as we increase the amount whilst this sound is playing. In the case of Wavetable, I find that somewhere around 3% works really well for this type of sound, and you start to get that more really aggressive kind of fluttery quality to the lead. And that's really it. That is the simple trick for creating this kind of a sound. Let's take a look at how you could do this in another synthesizer, say Drift, inside of Ableton Live. So let's go ahead and replace the Wavetable with a Drift. Let's turn the level of oscillator 2 all the way down, the sustain of the envelope all the way up, the mode to mono, and let's switch oscillator 1 here to a square wave. So that's our basic drift sound that we have. Now let's go ahead and switch our LFO here to the 1:1 rate mode, switch the ratio down to 0.25, and now all we need to do is just increase the amount of modulation that the LFO is applying to the pitch of drift. We can do that over in the bottom left-hand corner. Once again, any synthesizer with FM capabilities should be able to achieve this sound. If your synthesizer allows it, you can of course play around with different wave shapes for the FM as well. For instance, I could try a different shape other than a sine, maybe a triangle wave. Or I could even try a sawtooth wave. Just bear in mind, if it's a more complex waveform with more interesting higher end harmonics, it's gonna be a very different sound. Generally speaking, it's good to leave the modulator oscillator on something like a sine wave or a triangle wave, but of course, feel free to experiment with whatever you want. By the way, if you want to learn more from me outside of these free YouTube videos, I actually offer a bunch of different monthly memberships where you can get things like exclusive monthly video tutorials, live workshops, and even one-on-one sessions with me. You'll find more information in the links in the description. Or if you're not ready to spend any money on membership, you can sign up for my free newsletter where I send out regular updates, news, tips, and tricks on a monthly basis. You'll find a sign-up link for that in the description as well. And so now that we understand how to make the basic sound, let's go ahead and see how I use this technique to make the sound that we heard in the original mix. Okay, so here's the original sound. Now, obviously there's a lot more going on in this sound than just that FM, but let me show you exactly how much it's doing for the sound. So let's turn off this second layer here, which is just a kind of super saw layer in the background, and go to this first wavetable, which is this main lead sound. And we can see here that I've got oscillator 1 set to a square wave. I have the effect mode set to FM. I have the tuning set to -100 and the amount set to 3.9. Both of these are automated throughout the track as well. But take a listen to what happens if I just turn down the amount to 0% and we're left with that straight up square wave. Take a listen to how different it sounds. And as I start to increase that amount, we get a much more aggressive characteristic, which is perfect for the type of music that I'm working with here. Now, aside from this frequency modulation, the rest of the sound is coming from a lot of distortion. We have quite a decent amount of drive applied to the first filter here, as well as some movement applied with envelope 2 to that filter. And then where a lot of that really gnarly characteristic is coming from, aside from the FM, are these 3 different distortions that I have going on here. We have pedal, overdrive, and amp. Now, without each of these, the lead sounds a little bit weak, particularly because of the filter movement. But by applying these different distortions, we're flattening out the sound so that the filter movement doesn't really reduce the high frequencies so much as it does just change the timbral characteristic of the sound. Now this delay chain here actually isn't doing anything, it's turned off, but next up we just have some EQ, some over-the-top compression, and some more saturation just to drive up the level of this sound a little bit more, followed simply by some spatial effects, and that's really about it. Now if you do want to take this type of sound to the next level, I do recommend layering it with a more wide synth sound. Something like a super saw works perfect for this. So for instance, here with this original sound, I actually have this sound layered with a sound that sounds like this. And really, all this is just a sawtooth wave with a bunch of voices and a really high unison detune level running through a really overdriven filter and then into some over-the-top compression. We can also see if I open up the EQ, I've pulled out a lot of the low frequencies here so that most of the fundamental sound is coming from that original lead. And this is just providing some extra space, extra width, and extra depth to that lead sound. And so altogether we end up with this really nice, tight, dirty, aggressive lead sound that works perfectly in this type of music. Anyway, that's it from me. If you like this video, make sure to click the like button, subscribe if you're new, check out this video right here for more sound design tips and tricks. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you all in the next video.